Get started. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here as part of the inauguration of the UMKC School of Humanities and Social Sciences. I'm Tamara Falikoff. I'm the new dean of the new school, and we're just so happy to have alums back home, even though maybe the college was named differently than it is today, but you are part of our school now, and we value so much of all of your contributions and the ways that you're giving back to students. It doesn't go unnoticed. So welcome to our alumni panel called The Road Less Traveled, Finding Your Career Path. We wanted to take this opportunity to highlight several of our successful alumni and have them share the story of how they got to where they are today. As you will learn, the path they chose was not necessarily what they planned when they were a student at UMKC. So what we're trying to illustrate here is that you may have thoughts about what you want to study, and the liberal arts is a great place to do that because, to me, humanities and social sciences and arts is a laboratory space. Even though we think about STEM and a place for labs, it's a lab for us too. We're thinking critically, we're building up our skills, we can do anything. And so this group of alums is going to tell you what they decided to do and what they have achieved in their time. So what I'm going to do now is introduce our panel members and today's moderator, and then I'm going to leave the stage, and we're going to have some time for questions after our moderator asks questions. So please, we want this to be interactive and bidirectional. So to my left, Jordan Allen. You want to raise your hand? Oh, she has a sign. Okay, doesn't have to do that. It's not, my bad. I'm sorry. Thank you, Jordan. So Jordan graduated with her Bachelor of Arts degree in sociology with a cultural anthropology emphasis and minors in both political science and criminal justice and criminology. Yay. After graduating, Jordan spent time in the Middle East volunteering and learning Arabic. She started her postgraduate career as an intern for development agencies throughout the Middle East, which led her to a position at a Palestinian refugee rights and resource center as an international advocacy coordinator and staff researcher. She also graduated top of her class at SOAS, which is the University of London School of Oriental and African Studies, with a master's in development studies. And she has her hope to continue her work and passion in the field of human rights, especially regarding those of migrants and refugees. So that is Jordan's work. Next to her, yes, everyone deserves applause. These are amazing people here. Camra Meany earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in history from UMKC and is a dual master's prepared with history from Marquette and business from Rockhurst. And she serves as the Director of Advocacy and Government Relations at University Health, where she strategically works to eliminate health disparities and improve health outcomes for underinvested communities through policy creation and lobbying efforts. As the only woman of color performing government relations work for a major health system in the state of Missouri, Camra is proudly breaking glass ceilings and transforming healthcare advocacy throughout the region. She currently serves as president-elect of the UMKC School of Humanities and Social Sciences Alumni Board, so I'm really thrilled that she is part of our board. So it does not go unnoticed, as I said. And she's involved with Nurture KC, which is a nonprofit committed to reducing infant and maternal mortality, and is a mayoral appointed commissioner to the Blue Springs Public Art Commission. Thank you, Camra. I'm telling you, your hands are going to be tired because there's so many things I have to share with you. So Daniel Silva. He graduated from UMKC with his Bachelor of Arts in Sociology, and he currently serves as President and CEO of the Kansas City, Kansas Chamber of Commerce, where he focuses on a number of initiatives including community development and growth, business leadership, influence and advocacy, chamber sustainability, and board and staff inclusion. He's originally from Chicago and attended UMKC on a D1 Division scholarship for cross-country and track and field. He began his professional career with the League of United Latin American Citizens National Education Centers in Kansas City as a special projects coordinator, and after that worked for Unidos US, formerly National Council of La Raza in Washington, D.C., before relocating to Kansas City. Thank you, Daniel. Okay, so Melissa Zarda, sitting next to Daniel, graduated from UMKC with a Bachelor of Arts in Studio Art and an MA degree in Sociology. She helped to lead the fight to prevent people from being fired for their sexual orientation or gender identity. She took up the cause after the death of her brother Don, who was fired from his job for that very reason. With the help of the ACLU, a New York attorney, and the co-director of the Stanford Law School, Supreme Court, litigation clinic, the case was argued in front of the Supreme Court. The ruling, in a 6-3 decision, declared it illegal under federal law to discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity in the workplace. Melissa achieved all of this as the owner of a successful small business, and she also spends her time volunteering for local animal welfare groups. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, so we have an alum who is going to be our moderator, Lawrence Brooks IV. Lawrence Brooks was born and raised in the Marlboro neighborhood of South Kansas City, and he attended Lincoln College Prep Academy for middle school and high school, but graduated from Southeast High School in 2002. And after joining the U.S. Navy, he spent over a decade on active and reservist duty as an engineer, deploying 4 times and visiting over 25 countries. After leaving active duty, he moved back to Kansas City in 2020 to attend UMKC, and he earned several academic awards and graduated cum laude with a Bachelor of Arts in Communication Science with a dual emphasis in journalism and film and media studies. Upon graduating in spring 2022, he joined KCUR 89.3 FM as a race and culture reporter. And by the way, people tell me all the time that they hear him and love his work, so I'm so happy he's here as our moderator. And he also works part-time in the local film industry with Chuck Brown Productions. Thank you so much. Okay, so it's all yours. Thank you, Lawrence.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Falakal, for that grateful introduction to us all. I have a set of general questions for my panelists. We definitely appreciate you guys for showing up to hear our stories and to hear what the School of Humanity and Social Science provided for us. So the first general question would be, who wants to start? I'm going with Cameron. She looked the most excited. Yeah, I can go from the podium. Sure. So, general question number 1. Name something you did or a skill that you gained at UMKC, i.e. a class you took, an extracurricular activity, an internship that prepared you for the career or position that you currently occupy.
Hands down, easiest thing was critical thinking skills. I think people underestimate how incredibly important critical thinking is, especially in today's society. In no way whatsoever am I studying history, am I, I'd love to, by the way, but I'm not. But what it taught me, but how to critically think, how to understand the significance of something, not just who was involved, the date it happened, where it happened, but the significance of it, I've been able to carry with me throughout my career thus far, and I'm sure I'll continue to carry it moving forward.
Same question to Mr. Silva, I'm sorry.
You could be so kind as to repeat the question, Lawrence?
Name something you did or a skill that you gained at UMKC, i.e. a class you took, an extracurricular activity, an internship that prepared you for the career or position that you currently occupy.
I think one of the most impactful classes that I had was sociological theory. Coming from the urban core of Chicago, I don't think that my focus was always there in high school, but that class really struck a nerve with me and really ignited a passion within me. But I agree with the critical thinking piece of it. I think that's what I feel I've gained the most out of attending university. Also, the expansion of my networks. I have friends today that are doctors, attorneys, what have you, and I think that's a true blessing, and I consider myself very lucky.
Talk about building those networks, 'cause that's something that I was very keen on when I was a student here. I went to school here during COVID. I literally enrolled in UMKC in December of 2019. I arrived in Kansas City in January of 2020, and we were on lockdown by March, March like 12th, 15th, whatever time frame. 2020. So I like through virtual, being a traditional student, I really had to learn to network. So speak to the importance of networking with faculty, other students, other programs that are outside of, particularly your wheelhouse. Speak to the importance of that.
Yeah, and so having attended here on a track and cross country scholarship, I had a kid many pounds ago. I had already had a built-in network, which is awesome. But even within that built-in network, again, I interacted with people that were very different from me, came from all walks of life, different socioeconomic backgrounds. And so for me, that was pretty phenomenal. And again, to have a core group of folks that we built community with, became friends, and now it's so awesome to see how successful some of those folks have become. And again, there's nothing like building networks and expanding your networks. I would not be in my role now if it had not been for just getting to meet people, talking to people, communicating your dreams and your passions and what you believe in to people. You never know who's listening, you never know who's paying attention, and you never know when the next job offer is around the corner by having a simple conversation with someone you might not have otherwise had one with.
Well, let's continue with that theme. Mrs. Arter is a small business owner, and networking has to be absolutely essential for you to gain clients in your particular work. So speak to the importance of networking, not only while you were here in the School of Humanities and Social Sciences, but being a small business owner and somebody that has to put their face on their product every day.
Is this on?
Oh, it's not on? Go ahead, pass that over. Technical difficulty.
Okay, sorry. I didn't really get a chance to network the way I would have liked to when I was here because I was working full time. I was working full time during my undergrad and my grad, so there wasn't a lot of time for extracurriculars. The bulk of my networking probably came from all of my volunteer work. I was involved with a lot of local nonprofits, and I got to meet people that way, and that led to all of my job opportunities that, to this day, I can remember the very first offer that crossed my path, and that's what led to my business and everything. I can trace it all back to there, and that's through people I met while volunteering.
Ms. Allen, you spent a considerable amount of time outside of America working in your particular career field after you left here. So speak to the importance of networking in that context.
Oof. I mean, it's incredibly important. The more people you meet, the more different walks of life you interact with, especially coming as a sociologist, wanting to kind of understand the human condition and the human experience on a much more deeper level, talking to different people that had different experiences, different backgrounds, whether that be cultural, political, etc. That really helped me gain a better understanding of just what it means to be human. And that really kind of got me down the path of human rights, just because I quickly realized that the more people I talked to who were different than me in one way or another introduced me to a different perspective, and just all different aspects of life started to make better sense. And I think, UMKC really set me up for that in a way of, getting me hungry for that and getting, wanting that exposure, that experience, or those opportunities, I guess, so that by the time I did make it to a different country and, maybe someone spoke a different language than I did, but you find multiple ways of connecting with someone, and, the life just kind of takes it from there, I guess.
Got you. Miss Meany, Dr. Falakov said you were the only woman of color that worked in government policy and advocacy. So speak to how important the networking skills that you gained here have transferred to having a position like that and being in a position like that.
So like Melissa, I didn't have the opportunity to network as much as I would have liked to during my time here. Also worked full time, had a husband, lived in the suburbs, all of those things. But my entire career is based on networking. It's all about relationships. I can't walk into a Governor Parsons' office if I don't have a relationship with him and his secretary and his chief of staff. So every single day, relationships make or break every policy decision that I make. I will say, though, even though I didn't have the time to network while I was a student here, now that I'm out in the community and I've done numerous leadership programs with the Kansas City Chamber of Commerce and Missouri Chamber of Commerce and PAX in DC, what's very helpful is when you find someone who went to UMKC. So I don't know, I mean, for some reason, there's a lot of attorneys that I hang out with, and I would say 90% of them went to UMKC. If you're hanging out with someone in the business community, more often than not, they went to UMKC Block School. So while it didn't help me network necessarily when I was on campus, it has been this bridge since I've left.
All right, another general question. Out of all the jobs or career paths, out of all these jobs and career paths that you guys have taken, they're all intersectional with advocacy, social, and economic justice. Name one thing you learned in humanities and social sciences that best prepared you for the obstacles, pitfalls, or pushback that is inherent to the work that you do. I'm gonna give that one to Ms. Zarda to start off with.
Before my time at UMKC, I had very little exposure, I think, to the real world. I was in the suburbs, I was in a bubble, and I was around a lot of people who were like me, and that was it. So by the time I came to this campus and I got to just be in a more diverse population and be around more people, I can't say that I understand a lot of the struggles that I studied, but I felt like I had a big perspective shift, and I was able to see and try to come up with solutions and things through what I learned and what I read, that see ways that I could help, and it just kind of ignited a spark where I wanted everything to be fair, and it was definitely an eye-opening experience for me.
On to you, Mr. Silva.
You know, I think for me, I set out to want to do something that involved helping people. So I think my initial plan was to get into social work. It was really eye-opening for me to come, from Chicago here and be away from home, son of immigrant parents, not a whole lot of exposure to other folks. And so when I was on campus and in classes, it was very eye-opening to see not many people that looked like me, right, or shared my cultural background. And so that really motivated me to kind of get more into, well, how can we help kind of write this equity piece, right, within people, within institutions. And so I wanted to be a social worker, and I was going to school for that, and ended up working for a nonprofit, Latino social civil rights organizations, and I really very much enjoyed that. But I also felt, and I shared this on the call, that's in its own bubble, right? We're all kind of rowing in the same direction. Everyone believes equity is the right thing and appropriate, and we all kind of are in the same kind of bubble, if you will. And so it really took me, getting outside of my own bubble and comfort zone and getting into roles that, again, put me as the only person of color or the only person of Latino in the room speaking for that equity or that inclusion. And so my time at the Greater KC Chamber as a director of diversity and inclusion really opened up my eyes, and so I think sociology definitely prepared me for that, because that's the people element, it's the systematic element, it's the economic element. I think all of that affects, who we are as a society, and I think we're all just trying to do our piece to positively impact that. I think chambers of commerce are a great intersection of government, community, and business. Business doesn't exist in a vacuum. If we don't have safe streets or healthy people or inclusive approach, then we're not going to benefit wholly as a society. So, long answer, sorry.
Well, that kind of just kicked off into one of the more directed questions I had towards, for you, because you have found a way to merge commerce, business ethics, and social and economic justice to benefit all communities and not just the traditional majority. So tell the audience what you learned, something else other than sociology in the School of Humanities and Social Sciences that help you understand that these two fields do not have to be mutually exclusive. Like, in order for us to build a healthier and better society, then those two fields of thoughts or, lanes need to merge and work better together.
I think to me, it just always comes back to the people element, meeting people where they're at, meeting them in the middle, maybe sometimes extending yourself from where you're at to achieve the goal that you would like to achieve. I do run a mainstream chamber, the first person of color to run it in 125 years, which is shocking to me. And so within that comes certain institutional things, or approaches to board makeup, or what we're gonna do as an organization. And not everyone is on board with how I'm thinking. And so the people element always ends up to me the most important thing. I have people on my board who I don't necessarily agree with politically, right? But we are trying to get this community moving in the right direction. I have to work with them, and they work with me as well. So, people element.
All right. Back to the general questions. Ms. Allen, back to number 3. All of you have had jobs or taken career paths that are intersectional with advocacy, social, and economic justice. Name one thing you learned here going through these programs, let me find back, that best prepared you for the obstacles, pitfalls, or pushback that is like inherent with the work that you do. Well, you've done.
Yeah. So something that I learned wasn't in a specific course necessarily, but it was the importance of organizing just in general. So getting involved with student organizing groups, whether that be, for different, on-the-spot events that were going on, or for, the Fight for 15 movement that was going on at UMKC at the time. I think giving me opportunities to connect with students who were all oriented and active and willing to sacrifice their time outside of school and work and all the other things that they were doing to mobilize for a cause, really opened up my eyes and my thinking into what other possibilities are out there for other things that are going on, not just on campuses, but just in the world in general. And I think really getting introduced to the importance of that and what is possible, the large groups of people that can get together, the outcomes that come slowly but relatively surely, giving myself an opportunity to see the importance of that on the ground and really participate in that kind of interaction with large groups of people really carried over into my work, whether it be connecting with international advocates, giving them opportunities to connect with, local organizations and activists on the ground, kind of just going back to networking and kind of creating those bonds that really help pull people together once they're willing to take time aside from all of the other really time-consuming aspects of life to do something else that they're passionate about, kind of seeing where that can lead.
What kind of advocacy work did you do over there, if you don't mind, telling the audience?
In Palestine?
Yes.
Yeah, so it was primarily human rights advocacy. So I ended up developing and leading a course for international advocates to come to Palestine and kind of witness the Palestinian experience from refugees and from local activists and organizations throughout the West Bank, and kind of just developed like a 10-day course where they could really just hear from people actually going through these experiences, hear from Palestinians who are doing the research on what is happening to them, both politically and socially. And the entire idea was to give them an opportunity to meet these people so that when they go back to their international settings, they can, instead of speaking for Palestinians or speaking for people who are going through something, create space for them to speak for themselves and to kind of present their own research, present their own experience in international settings. So yeah, definitely. I mean, getting started in organizing and advocacy here at UMKC stuck with me, to this day. It doesn't ever leave you, and especially when it gives you an opportunity to find something that you're passionate about or be able to connect with a specific group of people, you know, you make it work, and you find ways of creating opportunities for people to share their stories.
All right, Ms. Meany, let's continue with that theme. You are actively in that work right now, having to go speak with state legislatures and, you know, advocating for policy and government regulation that affects the lives of everybody in the state. So speak to a specific skill that you gained here going through these programs or even at Marquette and continuing your education that, where am I at? Question 3, that best prepared you for the obstacles and pitfalls and everything that you may have to face, you know, dealing with the politics of Missouri.
I will echo everything that's been said so far. I'll also say, and this is academically department focused, the professors in the history department while I was here, there might be one in the audience, did a masterful job of flipping the way I had been taught history in the past. We are all constantly taught history from a top-down approach. It's always the founding fathers and the generals and all of this stuff that happened on this date in this place. And they instilled in me that true history comes from the bottom up. It's the people. It's what the people say. It's what the people feel. It's what the people read. And I carried that with me when I went to Marquette. Marquette is a Jesuit school. Social justice is something woven into every single thing that they do. I was raised Catholic. I had no idea there were Catholics who thought that way. So I really latched on. Living in Milwaukee, which goes back and forth with Chicago in any given year as the most segregated city in the United States of America, I learned a lot. I saw a lot. And Milwaukee's so much like Kansas City. So when I came home, I could just see the parallels. It looks like Kansas City. It's the same size as Kansas City. The only difference is, the only difference is there's this really beautiful lake that you can sail on. That's all there is. I mean, that's the difference. And so I came home and I really started to see the parallels between that. And I carried that social justice. I carried that perspective of it's the people who matter. Give the people the voice. Let the people tell their story. And whenever I go and sit down, no matter who it is, it could be Mayor Quentin Lucas, it could be Joshua Hawley. I tell the story from the hospital's patients. They're the people. How they feel, how the thing that they're going to do is going to impact them. It's wonderful when I can talk about how it's going to impact the hospital, but when I can say it will impact this mother this way, there's nothing more powerful. So for the past 18 months, I've been advocating for Medicaid extension for 12 months postpartum. Right now it's 60 days. So you have a C-section, you don't even get cleared by your doctor until you hit 12 weeks, and you lose all of your coverage. If you have substance abuse disorder, you no longer can go to the mental health professional. So you have these very vulnerable women who lose everything 60 days after they bring life into this world. Someone has to speak for them. You have to tell their story. Dr. Moody Burke, said history professor sitting in the audience, really instilled that in me. So I say, I don't know if there's anything more powerful than having a teacher completely change how you view the world. So good job.
I mean, that just speaks to like the bravery that it takes, like to really transition from being taught to look at the world one way and to have somebody, you know, fundamentally mix that up, and then it turns out to, you know, turn you and, you know, pretty much all of us into people who constantly work in advocacy to make sure that people who have less rights, less power, you know, less everything, that their voices are heard and they're important. So you studied, I'm going to the specific questions with Miss Meany. Black and Irish, history major. Speak to what you learned from, as a woman coming from these two marginalized cultures. Speak to how embracing their revolutionary spirit, and part of that you gained here, and the movements within these groups that help you continue to do your work today.
So for clarification, I am Black and I am also Irish.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I just wanted to.
All right.
I studied revolutionary Irish women. And I tell people this, and they look at me funny, and they're like, but why, but how? The parallels of learning about how a country like Ireland, who is still not unified, are still fighting this battle to unify their people, is so much similar to ours in what we want to think. We may geographically be unified, philosophically, certainly politically, we are not. And context might be different, situation might be different, time might be different, but you see the parallels in what has happened in the past to what has happened, what is happening in the future, which is probably why it's happening in the future, because most people don't see those parallels. I think about that every day when I sit down and I watch the Missouri House argue about something. It's just this lack of seeing one another as colleagues, as people, as Missourians, and that was everything when I was studying Irish history, that instilled that knowledge in me, and I carry that with me every single day. And as a Black Irish woman, I mean, it's the same thing. It's that turmoil with how do you balance who am I, what's my identity? And I mean, you carry that with you every day too. There's no separating the two. I don't know if that answers your question at all.
It's good enough.
Okay.
Great, it works. To speak about myself, and my journey was similar. Like, I grew up in a pretty, I wouldn't say sheltered, but pretty closed environment growing up here in South Kansas City, and didn't have much exposure to other people of other cultures, under other genders, other sexual orientations, and going to the military definitely changed that for me, and put me in a position where I got to see somebody else's humanity, even though their identity was totally different than mine, and got to notice the similarities, like going to different countries, like Jordan did in our study abroad program, really opened me up to different languages and different political ideas and philosophies, and to be able to understand that this is one planet that we all have to share and we all have to live on. So if we don't make compromise, or if we don't understand and love each other, then comes conflict. And I think honestly, the School of Humanity and Social Sciences coming here and being in this environment helped further reinforce that for me personally, as a student and as a human being. So off to Jordan on that. You spent a lot of time studying abroad. On a specific question, tell the audience what that did for you, not only as a student, but as a human being. Give us an example of what a cultural idea that you developed growing up in America that was broken in a good way, once you were exposed to other cultures, ideas, and ways of living and being.
Oof, okay, I'll do my best.
I'm an interviewer. I ask really interesting questions. I'm sorry.
I'll take it. No worries. So yeah, I spent a semester abroad through the Honors College. I studied at Charles University. And that was my first experience leaving the States. That was my first experience being immersed in a society that spoke a different language. And for me, that part of it, the language aspect, was really what got me hooked and interested on getting out of the United States. Mainly because I was fascinated and kind of enthralled with the idea of being able to be in a situation where I didn't have a really easy set of tools that comes with being, from like native speaking languages. So I kind of fell in love with that aspect of things, being able to find new ways of communicating, also just putting myself in a position where I was kind of, what's the word, like more vulnerable, I guess, being in a position where I didn't really understand everything that was going on all the time. I didn't understand the language entirely. And so I came back to the States, I graduated, and I kind of started thinking, okay, how can I take that and kind of run with it? What else can I do with putting myself in a situation where I don't have all of the tools ready? Like I don't have all of the abilities that I normally would. How do I make myself vulnerable, and what opportunities lie in being in a situation where I kind of leave myself at the mercy of the conversation, of the interaction. And so through different bouts of, being involved in activism and different kind of things, I ended up in the Middle East. And of course, in the Middle East is where I really started to learn a lot in terms of culture and the differences between how I grew up and how other people live their lives. And I think by far being in a situation where I was working with refugees, being introduced to human resiliency, being introduced to people who, despite having very little or being, very limited, have just an incredible sense of pride of who they are, where they come from, their history, regardless of how painful and brutal some of it is, And I really fell in love with that, and that's why I kept going back. That's why I stayed. That's why I took that experience and brought it back with me to the United States, and have, done my best to stay involved in, keeping in touch with those people who just can tell their story and really just change the way you think about, almost everything, but I think perseverance and just passion about who you are and where you come from is probably the biggest thing. I didn't grow up, not in the same way. You don't grow up with that, maybe with a sports team or something like that, but not quite the same. I don't know where my family is from in the deep history of my family, but I go to Palestine and I can ask pretty much anyone on the street, where's your family from? And they can tell you what village and where it is and what happened to them. Those kind of interactions really changed my perspective on my entire life.
So she spoke about human resiliency. So I'm gonna switch to you, Ms. Zarda. You had an experience that changed the trajectory of your life with going before the Supreme Court and fighting for your brother, with the case, discrimination case against sexual orientation, or not being fired based on that. So speak to the resiliency that took for you, and what is something that you learned here, especially coming to a totally different environment than what you grew up in, than where you grew up. How did the experience here help you gain that human resiliency to take on one of the most prominent institutions in America, not only America, the globe?
Well, that was, I never expected to be kind of thrown into the middle of a human rights debate, national stage. That wasn't anything I ever thought would happen, and it did happen. And I would say that it was the hardest thing I've ever done, hands down. But that's because of my brother. And I felt very personally hurt by what had happened to him, and that he didn't get to see any resolution in his case. So that is why we decided to continue the case on his behalf, on the behalf of all of the other people who have been discriminated against and didn't have recourse, even though we felt that they were federally protected. I think that what I gained is that a lot of like-minded people who have these interests and these causes, I got to be around them for the first time here. And I got to see the passion that they had and how committed they were to righting these wrongs. And I'll be honest, before I came to college, I didn't think I was going to go to college. I wasn't a great, I mean, I got good grades, but I wasn't a great student in high school. It didn't hold my interest. And I just thought, okay, I'm out of here. But I got talked into it by my sister. And when I did, I got excited to be in school. And I actually found these causes and these things that I cared about here and these subjects in the classroom that were interesting to me. And it was just a whole different experience. And I'm just so grateful for that. You know, I'm so grateful that I got to experience it and that I got to go to school and that she talked me into it, because I don't know how this would have gone if I wouldn't have had that foundation to build on when I got put on that stage.
Beautiful answer. We all know that critical studies in both the humanities and social sciences are under attack, especially in public education. So speak to the importance and value of learning concepts within sociology, history, art, like all the departments that we have here in the School of Humanities and Social Science. I did focus these questions for, you know, kind of like students somewhat, because I thought some students would be here, but whatever. You know, maybe they show up next time. But just tell the room how the aspects of these fields of study help enhance your marketability in the job market. Mr. Silva.
I think what's been most valuable to me as I reflect on my experience in college is just kind of followed more of a traditional route, right? As I was relatively young at the time, I was young. And so this experience here really allowed me the opportunity and space to really expand and explore and learn things I thought I knew or maybe had an opinion towards, and really gave me an opportunity to grow with that, right? And I think in terms of marketability or my future career, I think that has helped me. My ability to kind of always want to learn and grow, and I keep coming back to the people element, because I really have found that that's been the most effective thing that I can do as a professional. Never would have thought with the sociology degree I'd be running a 600-member business organization, but it does tie, right? And so and it comes down to the ability, I think, just to work with people and again meet people where they're at. I tell the story all the time. One of my best friends, he's a brother to me. He's this tall, 6'5" white guy from Neosho. I mean, I never would have made that contact with him ever had I not come to UMKC and had he not been on that team. I mean, we were living completely different lives. And so I think, again, just the ability to expand and explore and learn has really been helpful for me. And then you have to get crafty, too. If I was a student at UMKC, I probably wouldn't be sitting in this room right now either, right? I would be doing something else because it's Friday. But again, being given that space was great, and it changed my life. I mean, if not for this education, I don't know what my life would have looked like. Certainly no one back home, was able to achieve some of the things I've been able to do, so.
All of these stories right here speak to the road less traveled. And, that's compared to your extremely focused degree program, i.e. in a school of medicine or any other, school in here that has a really one for one. I mean, we had how many displays in here today from the different schools of humanities and social sciences? You're probably not going to find that in another building when going to look at their degree programs. So speak to the benefits of that, taking a more risky path versus the most traditional. Ms. Meany.
I mean, in the moment, it wasn't risky. You're young, you're idealistic, you're going to do what you dream of doing. In hindsight, sitting here and listening to all these people I'm on this panel with, that, again, UMKC has given me the opportunity to interact with, people I probably wouldn't on the day-to-day. I think it goes to show how a variety of degrees, a variety of people, how you can all come together and collectively make change. And now we all know each other. And in all fairness, we all seem to be kind of badass. So imagine what we could do if we went and had drinks after this. I have to pick up my kids. I can't go have drinks today, but imagine. And I think it goes to show that UMKC can be, and in all fairness, any university where people are willing to learn and be open-minded and consider different perspectives can be an incubator space for progress. So this one panel has become this mini incubator space for progress.
That's true, because you could have told me 5 years ago I'll be standing here in front of this microphone talking to a room full of strangers, you know? Being somebody that worked in public radio, and, you know, being a race and culture reporter and really have to speak to the experiences and lives of marginalized people out here. I mean, 5 years ago, I was an engineer in the Navy. I was turning wrenches on all kind of different cool equipment that ran ships. So yeah, having this experience at the School of Humanities and Social Sciences on a whim honestly changed my life for the better and put me on a trajectory that I never thought I would have been on 5 years ago. But to you guys, we got 10 minutes left here. It is 3:49 or 11 minutes technically. So what questions do you have for any of our panelists today? Anybody? Let's give them a mic.
Thank you. First of all, congratulations to the panelists for all your accomplishments so far and many more in the future. I have a question particularly for Ms. Allen. What do you think about the current situation that's going on in Israel with the Netanyahu administration and its relationship, its oppressive
You being real tough
relationship
right
with the Palestinians? And I want to ask that question from the point of view of how do you think a solution can be developed to this particular issue?
Thank you for your question and your engagement. I appreciate that. You know, as a non-Palestinian in this space, I oftentimes get asked that question of my perspective as an American, and I always do like to kind of put that at the forefront, right? Like, this is my experience as a white woman in America. I am not Palestinian. I do not experience these issues on a daily basis. You know, I didn't grow up with them. I have the privilege of being able to have spent some time there and to know many Palestinians who have gone through this. But, you know, sometimes I struggle with speaking on their issue because I oftentimes in my work try and create space for Palestinians to do so. And because I don't have a Palestinian next to me to kind of answer your question, I'll do my best. And that is just, you know, we see political extremism all over, right? Like, we can easily relate to that here in the States. And the result and the aftermath of that is a lot of people getting hurt in one way or another, whether that be having their rights infringed upon, whether that be, you know, feeling unsafe in their given space. You know, the future is really hard to speak about because you know, I can hardly speak for the future of my own country, let alone one that I'm not from. But you know, I will say that what I have found in my ability to travel and spend time in the Middle East is that the more people that I can talk to, the more people that I can connect with, people who, you know, are based in outside countries who are, you know, not from the area, the more opportunities they have to kind of just expand upon what they're going through, what things look like on the ground. the less complicated those situations turn out to be. You know, the less, what's the word I'm looking for? Complicated is a word, but the less unsolvable things really seem, the more you talk to people and really see what's happening. As people, right? Not as politicians, which I have the fortunate position of not being. So I don't know if that fully answers your question. It's not super satisfactory, I'm sure.
Well, let me ask a question from this point of view.
As an American,
would you be willing to have a discussion with someone from the Biden administration or the Biden administration?
I'm always willing to have a conversation, of course. Yeah. You know, I think without conversations, we're not ever going to get anywhere. Putting yourself in a position where you're able to, you know, talk and get people's perspectives and then give your own is the only way we can ever move forward. Thanks for your question.
Very complicated question at that. I probably got some answers for you because I was over there for a little while too, but we'll talk off microphone.
My question is for Ms. Meany. Where you talked about the power of story and how you use that, and also with story, the commonality that one sees in the struggles of everybody has. How do you bring that out, and how do you crack that facade and that the thing that of the institution where thing has to be done, and we have to think that way. We have our positions. How do you try to crack that, particularly when you talked about your experience at the, you know, in the Missouri legislature?
Well, sometimes you don't. I think we should preface this with what you see and what you think politicians are not what politicians are. They want you to think that's what they are. That's not what they are.
So can you tell us what they are?
It depends which one you're talking about. Most of them, they're really not horrible people. Some of them are, but most of them aren't. And in their own mind, they do care. And they care about the person. They care about the people. They care about their constituents. And they do want to hear the stories. And I think you could ask any lobbyist in this state, in this country, storytelling is our #1 power. That is how you get them to take notice. That's how you get them to pay attention. And whether they do it because they care or because they want the vote, sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes it's just telling the story for the people who don't get to tell their story, the people who don't get to go to Jefferson City. And those are very lucky people, because Jefferson City is a horrible place right now. But it's telling their stories for them. And I've never had a single person, and usually it's their legislative aides, so you're talking to 22-year-olds who haven't listened and don't take into consideration the story you're telling them.
Thank you so much. I think all of the people on this panel are incredibly resilient because they're willing to ask the hard questions and to challenge the norms. So I'd like to each give them a gift for their time and their expertise, and a round of applause would be welcome.